Today's story is one that hits close to home for many of us who have had unexpected challenges with family. It's about the time my sister-in-law's stay took an unexpected turn and left us in a tough spot. Stick around to hear how we managed to navigate through this situation. I never thought a simple offer to stay temporarily could turn into such a challenging experience. It all began when my sister-in-law, let's call her Sarah, needed a place to stay for a few weeks due to some personal issues. My spouse and I, being the supportive family members we are, welcomed her into our home, not knowing the twist of events that would follow. Sarah's arrival at our home was marked by a mix of emotions, relief, hope, and a hint of apprehension. She was family, and when she called my spouse in distress, explaining her situation and her need for a place to stay, we didn't think twice. Our home had always been open to those in need, and Sarah, being my spouse's sister, was no exception. We immediately began preparing the guest room. I vacuumed the carpet, fluffed the pillows, and even added a vase of fresh flowers on the nightstand. It was a simple gesture, but we wanted her to feel welcome, loved, and supported. Her first night with us was peaceful. We shared a hearty dinner and caught up on family news. Sarah seemed genuinely grateful, thanking us repeatedly for taking her in. "I don't know what I'd do without you guys," she said, her eyes glistening with what seemed like genuine gratitude. It warmed my heart to know we were making a difference in her life, even in a small way. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a sense of satisfaction. We were doing the right thing, helping family in need. Over the next few days, Sarah settled in. She was polite, engaging, and even helped with household chores. She would join me in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, or washing dishes while chatting about her plans. It felt like having an old friend over, and I started to think this arrangement might work out better than I had anticipated. My spouse, too, was happy to have her around. They spent hours reminiscing about their childhood, sharing stories that made us all laugh. But soon, small things began to catch my attention. It started with the pantry. I noticed that some of the snacks I had bought for the week were gone by midweek. Maybe I miscalculated, I thought to myself. I brushed it off, assuming Sarah might have eaten a bit more than expected. After all, she was staying here rent-free. It wasn't unreasonable for her to eat what we provided. But then the pattern repeated. The cereal box, which should have lasted another week, was empty. The milk carton was half gone after just 2 days. I shrugged it off again, thinking, it's just food. No big deal. However, things escalated. One evening, I opened the refrigerator to find that the ingredients I had specifically bought for a weekend dinner party were gone. The chicken, the vegetables, even the fancy cheese I had splurged on vanished. Confused and slightly annoyed, I asked Sarah about it. She looked up from her phone, her expression blank, and said, "Oh, I didn't realize those were for something special. I made lunch with them earlier." Her tone was casual, as if it wasn't a big deal. I smiled weakly and told her it was fine, but inside I was fuming. These incidents became more frequent. It wasn't just food, it was the little things. Sarah began treating our home like a hotel. She would leave lights on, use up toiletries without replacing them, and even rearrange items in the living room without asking. It felt like she had crossed an invisible line, one that separated being a guest from being a considerate family member. I started to feel the strain of her presence, and I could tell my spouse did too, although neither of us said anything outright. We didn't want to hurt her feelings, especially knowing she was already going through a difficult time. I tried to set boundaries subtly. I started labeling food in the fridge, hoping she would take the hint. I mentioned casually how we were trying to cut back on household expenses, thinking she might become more mindful. But Sarah didn't seem to notice or care. One night, I walked into the kitchen to find her cooking an elaborate meal. Pots and pans were scattered everywhere, and the aroma of spices filled the air. I asked her what she was making and she smiled, saying, "Just experimenting with some recipes I found online." I couldn't help but notice that most of the ingredients were ones I had planned to use for our weekly meals. Despite these frustrations, I held back from confronting her directly. My spouse and I discussed it in private, debating whether we should say something. "She's family," my spouse would remind me. "She's going through a tough time. Let's not make it harder for her." I agreed, but the resentment was building. I felt like our kindness was being taken for granted, and it was starting to affect the harmony in our home. As days turned into weeks, the situation became harder to ignore. Sarah's behavior didn't change, and the strain it placed on us grew. We began to question our decision to let her stay, wondering if we had made a mistake. But at the same time, we knew we couldn't turn our backs on her. It was a delicate balance, and we were walking on a tightrope, trying to maintain our sanity while being supportive. As the days passed, Sarah's presence in our home began to feel less like a temporary arrangement and more like an indefinite occupation. Initially, we didn't think much of her late-night movements, hearing her rummaging through the pantry or the faint hum of the microwave at odd hours. She's probably just hungry, I told myself, brushing aside any irritation. But then came the mornings when I would find the kitchen in disarray. Crumbs littered the counter, jars were left open, and dirty dishes piled up in the sink. It was a sharp contrast to the neat, orderly space we were accustomed to. I would sigh, clean up the mess, and remind myself that she was still adjusting to her new environment. One Saturday morning, I went to prepare breakfast, only to discover that the bread, eggs, and milk I had bought the day before were gone. Frustration bubbled within me, but I pushed it down. Maybe she didn't realize, I muttered, though a part of me knew better. When Sarah emerged from her room later, I gently asked if she had seen the groceries. She smiled sheepishly, admitting that she had made herself a midnight feast and promised to replace everything. But the groceries were never replaced, and similar incidents continued to occur. It wasn't just the kitchen that bore the brunt of Sarah's carefree habits. The guest room, once pristine and inviting, began to look like a storage unit. Clothes were strewn across the floor, empty coffee cups sat on the nightstand, and the bed was rarely made. One afternoon, while Sarah was out, I peeked into the room to gather some laundry. The sight stopped me in my tracks. Piles of clothing, shopping bags, and even discarded food wrappers cluttered the space. It felt as though she had brought chaos into our carefully maintained home. Sarah's use of household resources also became a source of tension. Our utility bills started climbing. Lights were left on in empty rooms, the heater ran continuously, and the water usage skyrocketed. My spouse and I joked about it at first, calling her our high-maintenance guest, but the humor wore thin as the costs added up. We tried subtle hints, leaving notes to turn off lights, mentioning how we were trying to conserve energy, but they went unnoticed. One evening, I decided to address the issue more directly. I brought up the rising bills during dinner, framing it as a general household concern. Sarah nodded, agreeing that conserving resources was important, but her actions didn't reflect her words. That same night, she took an hour-long shower, and I could hear the water running as I sat in the living room, trying to stifle my frustration. As the weeks turned into a month, Sarah's behavior began to affect the dynamics within our household. My spouse, who had initially been the one advocating for her stay, started showing signs of frustration as well. We would exchange knowing glances when Sarah helped herself to leftovers without asking, or when she casually mentioned plans that involved using our car without seeking permission. It was as if we were tiptoeing around her, trying to maintain peace while silently grappling with our growing resentment. The breaking point came one Sunday afternoon. I had planned a small gathering with friends, something I hadn't done in weeks due to the disruption Sarah's stay had caused. I spent the morning cleaning and preparing, eager to enjoy a few hours of normalcy. But as the guests arrived, I noticed Sarah had taken over the living room. She was sprawled on the couch, watching TV, completely oblivious to the event I had meticulously planned. When I gently asked if she could move to her room for a while, she rolled her eyes and said, "Why? I was here first." The tension was palpable. My friends sensed the awkwardness, and I spent the evening apologizing for the disruption. After the guests left, I confronted Sarah for the first time. "This isn't just your space," I told her, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and exhaustion. "We're happy to help you, but you need to be more considerate." She looked at me with a mixture of surprise and indignation, muttering a half-hearted apology before retreating to her room. That night, my spouse and I sat in silence, each of us grappling with the realization that something had to change. In the days following our first confrontation, Sarah's attitude shifted noticeably, and not for the better. What had previously been minor annoyances now felt like deliberate provocations. She began keeping to herself more, retreating to the guest room for hours at a time, emerging only to eat or grab something from the pantry. The tension in the air was thick, and her once friendly demeanor had been replaced by an almost passive-aggressive indifference. The silence that hung over the house was deafening, broken only by the occasional clinking of dishes or the sound of the television playing from her room. One morning, I woke up to find the front door wide open. Panic shot through me as I rushed to check if anything had been stolen. Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing was amiss. "Did you leave the door open last night?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She glanced up briefly and shrugged. "I thought I closed it," she said nonchalantly before going back to her phone. The casual dismissal of such a serious oversight left me speechless. I spent the next hour double-checking locks and ensuring everything was secure, my frustration simmering just below the surface. As days turned into weeks, Sarah's disregard for boundaries became more blatant. She began helping herself to items that were clearly off-limits. One evening, I discovered that she had taken my spouse's favorite bottle of wine, a gift from a close friend, and used it to host an impromptu movie night in the guest room with some friends she had invited over without informing us. When confronted, she simply said, "I didn't think you'd mind. It's just a bottle of wine." The audacity of her response left us both stunned. It wasn't about the wine. It was about the complete lack of respect for our home and our generosity. The breaking point came when Sarah decided to rearrange the living room while we were out running errands. We returned to find the furniture moved, decorations shifted, and even some of our personal items boxed up and placed in the garage. "I thought the room needed a fresh look," she said when we questioned her. My spouse tried to reason with her, explaining that while we appreciated her enthusiasm, such changes should have been discussed first. Sarah, however, brushed off the criticism, insisting that she was just helping to improve the space. By now, my patience was wearing thin. I tried to channel my frustration into finding solutions. I suggested we establish some clear boundaries and even drafted a list of house rules, hoping to restore some sense of order. My spouse supported the idea, but when we presented it to Sarah, she reacted defensively. "Are you seriously treating me like a tenant now?" she asked, her voice laced with indignation. "I'm family. I thought I could count on you guys to be supportive." Her words stung, but they also highlighted the core issue. Sarah saw our generosity as an entitlement rather than a privilege. Despite the challenges, I reminded myself that Sarah was still family. I tried to approach the situation with empathy, considering the struggles that had led her to seek refuge with us in the first place. But empathy has its limits, and ours were being tested daily. My spouse and I began having late-night conversations, trying to figure out the best way to address the situation without causing irreparable damage to our relationship with Sarah. We debated whether to ask her to contribute financially, to give her a timeline for moving out, or to seek help from other family members. One night, during one of these discussions, my spouse said something that stuck with me. "We opened our home to her because we care," they said, their voice heavy with emotion. "But caring for someone doesn't mean letting them take advantage of you. We need to find a way to help her without losing ourselves in the process." It was a sobering realization, and it gave me the clarity I needed to move forward. We had to set firm boundaries, not out of anger or frustration, but out of love for ourselves and our home. The day we decided to sit Sarah down for a serious conversation was one of mixed emotions. My spouse and I had rehearsed our points, carefully crafting our words to balance firmness with compassion. It wasn't just about confronting her behavior. It was about salvaging the frayed threads of our relationship before they unraveled completely. As we called her into the living room, Sarah appeared wary, her guarded expression hinting that she sensed what was coming. She perched on the edge of the couch, arms crossed defensively, while we sat opposite her. "We need to talk about how things have been going," I began, keeping my tone steady. My spouse nodded in agreement, adding, "We've noticed some challenges, and we think it's important to address them." Sarah's eyes flickered with a mix of curiosity and irritation. "What challenges?" she asked, her voice sharp but restrained. Taking a deep breath, I started listing the specific issues. her use of household resources, her disregard for boundaries, and the growing sense of imbalance in our shared space. I chose my words carefully, framing them as observations rather than accusations, but Sarah's posture stiffened with every sentence. "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this," she interjected when I paused to let my spouse speak. "I thought family was supposed to support each other. Isn't that what you said when you offered me a place to stay?" Her words, though laced with indignation, struck a chord. She wasn't entirely wrong. We had opened our home out of love and a desire to help her through a difficult time. But that didn't mean our kindness could be taken for granted. "It's not about us not wanting to support you," my spouse said, their voice calm but firm. "It's about finding a way to live together respectfully. We want to help, but this is our home, and we need to feel like it's still ours." Sarah looked away, her jaw tightening. The silence that followed was heavy, each of us grappling with the weight of the conversation. Finally, she muttered, "Fine. I'll try to do better." It wasn't the heartfelt apology we had hoped for, but it was a start. In the days that followed, there was a noticeable shift in Sarah's behavior, though not in the way we had anticipated. Instead of engaging with us or making an effort to improve, she withdrew further into her own world. The guest room became her sanctuary, and the rest of the house felt oddly empty without her presence. The occasional encounters we did have were brief and strained, marked by curt exchanges and an underlying tension that neither of us could ignore. One evening, as I was tidying up the kitchen, I overheard Sarah on the phone. Her voice was hushed, but the frustration in her tone was unmistakable. "They're acting like I'm some kind of burden," she said, her words stinging more than I cared to admit. "I don't know how much longer I can stay here. It's like walking on eggshells every day." I paused, unsure whether to confront her or let it go. In the end, I chose the latter, retreating to my room and sharing what I had heard with my spouse. "She feels like a burden," I said, my voice tinged with guilt. "Maybe we've been too harsh." My spouse shook their head. "We've done everything we can to make her feel welcome. This isn't about being harsh. It's about setting boundaries that she refuses to respect." Their words resonated, but the guilt lingered, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. I found myself questioning whether we had handled the situation correctly, whether there was something more we could have done to bridge the growing divide. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah's attitude remained unchanged. The house felt less like a home and more like a battleground, each of us navigating the tension with careful precision. My spouse and I began to have private conversations about the possibility of asking her to leave. It wasn't a decision we took lightly. We knew it would strain our relationship with her, possibly irreparably, but the toll her presence was taking on our mental and emotional well-being was becoming too much to bear. One evening, after a particularly heated argument over something as trivial as the TV remote, we realized we couldn't continue like this. "We have to do something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't healthy for any of us." My spouse nodded, their expression heavy with agreement. That night, we decided that it was time to have one final conversation with Sarah, one that would determine the future of her stay in our home. As I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that had settled over me. Tomorrow would be a turning point for better or worse. The next morning arrived with an air of inevitability. My spouse and I had rehearsed what we would say to Sarah, though neither of us felt entirely ready for the conversation. The atmosphere at breakfast was tense, the clinking of forks against plates the only sound in an otherwise silent kitchen. Sarah barely acknowledged us as she ate, her eyes fixed on her phone. I glanced at my spouse, who gave me a subtle nod, signaling it was time. "Sarah," I began, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." She looked up, her expression a mix of annoyance and apprehension. "Again?" she asked, setting her fork down with exaggerated impatience. Ignoring her tone, my spouse chimed in. "This is important. Let's sit in the living room." Sarah sighed audibly but followed us without protest, settling onto the couch with her arms crossed. Taking a deep breath, I started. "We've been trying to make this arrangement work, but it's clear that things aren't improving. We love you, and we want to support you, but this situation is causing stress for all of us." My spouse added, We've set boundaries to ensure everyone feels comfortable, but those boundaries aren't being respected. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What boundaries? You're treating me like an outsider in my own family, she snapped. Her words stung, but I pushed forward. You're not an outsider, Sarah. You're family, and that's exactly why this is so hard. But living here means contributing to the household and respecting the space we all share. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of our words hanging in the air. Sarah looked away, her jaw tight, and I could see the emotions warring within her, anger, frustration, perhaps even guilt. Finally, she said, "So what are you saying? You want me to leave?" The question hit like a blow. Even though it was a possibility we had already discussed, my spouse responded gently, "We're saying that this isn't working the way it is. We need to find a solution that works for everyone, and that might mean you finding a place of your own." Sarah stood abruptly, pacing the room. "I can't believe this," she muttered. "You're kicking me out after everything I've been through? I thought I could count on you." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerable side of her that had prompted us to take her in initially. "We're not kicking you out," I said, my tone softening. "We're offering to help you transition. We can help you look for a place, or talk to other family members who might be able to support you. But we can't keep going like this." The conversation stretched on, each of us trying to make our points without escalating the tension further. Sarah alternated between defensive arguments and moments of quiet reflection. At one point, she sat back down, her posture less rigid. "I didn't realize how much this was affecting you," she admitted quietly. I didn't know where else to go." Hearing her vulnerability softened some of my frustration. "We know you've been through a lot," I said. "And we're not saying we don't want to help. But helping doesn't mean sacrificing our own peace and stability." My spouse added, "This doesn't mean we don't care about you. It just means we need to find a better way to support each other." By the end of the conversation, there was no definitive resolution, but there was a sense of understanding. Sarah agreed to start looking for other living arrangements, and we promised to support her in any way we could. The tension in the room was palpable, but beneath it was a flicker of hope that this was the first step toward repairing the strained dynamics between us. That evening, as my spouse and I sat together in the quiet of our room, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a lingering uncertainty about what the future would hold. "Did we do the right thing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My spouse squeezed my hand. "We did what we had to do," they said. "And sometimes that's the hardest part." The days following our conversation with Sarah were a mixture of strained civility and cautious optimism. While the atmosphere in the house was still tense, there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. Sarah spent more time researching apartments online and made an effort to engage with us during meals, though her words often carried an undercurrent of defensiveness. My spouse and I noticed her attempts and chose to acknowledge them, hoping that this newfound willingness to cooperate would pave the way for a smoother transition. One afternoon, Sarah approached me hesitantly as I was folding laundry. "I've found a few places that look decent," she said, holding out her phone to show me listings for small apartments in nearby neighborhoods. Her tone was subdued, and I could sense the effort it took for her to share this with me. I glanced at the screen and nodded. "These look promising," I said, trying to sound encouraging. "Do you need help contacting the landlords?" Sarah hesitated before nodding. "Maybe. I'm not sure how to go about it." In that moment, I felt a wave of compassion. Despite the difficulties we'd faced, Sarah was still family, and it was clear that navigating this transition alone was daunting for her. "I'll help you," I said, offering her a small smile. "We'll figure it out together." For the first time in weeks, her guarded expression softened, and she muttered a quiet, "Thanks." Over the next few days, my spouse and I worked with Sarah to arrange viewings for the apartments she had found. It wasn't an easy process. Some landlords were unresponsive, and others required references or credit checks that Sarah wasn't fully prepared for. Each setback seemed to weigh heavily on her, and there were moments when her frustration bubbled over into heated arguments. "This is impossible," she exclaimed one evening, slamming her laptop shut. "I'm never going to find a place." "You will," my spouse said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It just takes time." We'll get through this. Sarah didn't respond, but her shoulders relaxed slightly and she nodded. That night, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come since she first arrived. Though the journey was far from over, there was a sense that we were finally moving toward a resolution. As the weeks went by, Sarah's efforts began to pay off. She secured an interview for a part-time job that would help her cover rent, and found an apartment that fit her budget. It was a modest studio in a quiet area, but Sarah seemed genuinely excited about it. "It's not much, but it's a start," she said, showing us pictures of the space. My spouse and I congratulated her, feeling a mix of relief and pride at her progress. Moving day arrived sooner than expected, bringing with it a whirlwind of activity. We helped Sarah pack her belongings, carefully boxing up her clothes, books, and the few personal items she had brought with her. The guest room, once cluttered with her presence, began to feel empty and unfamiliar. As we loaded the last of her things into the car, I felt a pang of sadness mixed with relief. At her new apartment, we helped Sarah unpack and settle in. The space was small but cozy, with enough room for her to make it her own. She seemed genuinely happy, her eyes lighting up as she arranged her belongings and talked about her plans for the future. "I'm going to make this work," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Thank you for helping me get here." Her words struck a chord, and I felt a lump form in my throat. "We're proud of you," I said, meaning every word. My spouse nodded in agreement. "This is your fresh start, Sarah. Make the most of it." As we said our goodbyes, there was a sense of closure that had eluded us for so long. Driving back home, my spouse and I were quiet, each lost in our own thoughts. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I turned to them and said, "Do you think she'll be okay?" My spouse smiled softly. "She's stronger than she thinks," they replied. "She'll be fine." That evening, as we sat together in the now quiet house, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a lingering hope that this new chapter would be a positive one for Sarah and for us. While the journey had been far from easy, it had taught us valuable lessons about family, boundaries, and the importance of finding balance in our relationships. In the days following Sarah's move, the house felt both emptier and lighter. The silence where her laughter and occasional arguments used to fill the rooms was noticeable, yet oddly comforting. My spouse and I found ourselves adjusting to a new rhythm, one that involved fewer tensions, but also moments of reflection about what had transpired. We realized that although the chapter with Sarah living with us had ended, the story itself was far from over. Family dynamics, after all, are rarely simple or static. I spent more time in the kitchen now, preparing meals without the stress of wondering if the food would be respected or wasted. The pantry was neatly organized, and I took pleasure in the small routines that brought order back into our home. Yet, despite this return to normalcy, there were moments when I found myself thinking about Sarah, about her struggles, her resilience, and the complicated emotions that had underscored her time with us. It was impossible to separate the practical difficulties from the deeper, human stories behind them. One afternoon, I received a call from Sarah. Her voice was softer than I remembered, tinged with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "I just wanted to thank you again for everything," she said. "Moving out was harder than I thought, but it's helping me find my footing." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me despite the lingering sadness. "We're glad to hear that," I replied. "Remember, you can always reach out if you need anything." As the weeks passed, Sarah's updates became more frequent and hopeful. She found a steady job, began saving money, and even joined a community group where she was making new friends. Hearing about her progress filled me with a cautious optimism that perhaps this fresh start was exactly what she needed. Still, I knew that rebuilding trust and family bonds would take time, effort, and forgiveness on all sides. My spouse and I also took this time to reflect on our own boundaries and what we had learned from the experience. We realized the importance of clear communication and mutual respect in any living situation. While we had welcomed Sarah with open arms, we had underestimated the challenges that would come with it. This understanding strengthened our resolve to be more mindful and compassionate in the future, both with family and ourselves. Despite the progress, not every day was easy. There were moments when the memories of the conflicts and frustrations resurfaced unexpectedly, casting shadows over the present. But with each challenge, we reminded ourselves of the growth that had come from adversity. Our relationship with Sarah had changed, but it hadn't been broken beyond repair. There was still hope for healing and reconciliation. One evening, my spouse suggested we invite Sarah over for dinner. It might be good to reconnect in a relaxed setting, they said. To remind each other that we're family, no matter what. I agreed, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. The invitation was sent, and Sarah accepted with a warm message that read, "Looking forward to it." When the day arrived, I spent hours preparing the meal, carefully choosing dishes that I knew Sarah loved. As she walked through the door, there was a brief moment of hesitation before she smiled genuinely. The evening was filled with conversation, laughter, and shared memories. A gentle reminder that despite everything, family ties could endure and even grow stronger. As the night drew to a close, Sarah thanked us again, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and a newfound sense of belonging. "I'm glad to be here," she said softly. "It feels like a fresh start, not just for me but for all of us." My spouse and I exchanged a glance, both silently acknowledging the journey ahead. A journey of patience, understanding, and unconditional love. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a profound sense of peace. The past few months had been difficult, but they had also brought clarity and growth. We had faced challenges that tested our limits, yet we had emerged with a deeper appreciation for the complexities of family and the strength found in forgiveness. The weeks following that heartfelt dinner marked a turning point in our relationship with Sarah. Slowly but surely, the walls that had built up between us began to crumble, replaced by bridges of understanding and renewed respect. It wasn't an overnight transformation, far from it, but each small step forward felt like a victory in itself. Sarah started to visit more frequently, often dropping by with homemade meals or sharing stories about her new job and the friends she was making. Her laughter returned, lighter and freer than before, and it filled our home with a warmth we hadn't realized we'd missed. One afternoon, Sarah invited us to her apartment for the first time. We walked into the modest but cozy space, noticing the small personal touches she'd added. A vase of fresh flowers on the windowsill, colorful cushions on the couch, framed photos of her childhood and family. It was clear that she had worked hard to create a place where she felt safe and happy. As we sat around her kitchen table, sipping tea and chatting, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for this moment. Despite all the hardship, here we were, family, reunited in a new way. During that visit, Sarah opened up about her journey over the past months. She spoke candidly about the challenges she faced, finding stable employment, managing finances, and overcoming feelings of loneliness and uncertainty. It wasn't easy, she admitted, her eyes shining with honesty. But having your support, even from a distance, made all the difference. "I'm learning to stand on my own 2 feet, and it feels good." Hearing her words, I realized how much strength it took for her to rebuild her life, and I felt proud of the resilience she had shown. Our conversations often turned reflective, touching on the past conflicts but focusing more on how we could move forward. We discussed boundaries, communication, and the importance of mutual respect, lessons that had been hard-earned but invaluable. Sarah expressed remorse for the difficulties she had caused and a sincere desire to make amends. "I want to be better," she said simply, "for myself and for our family." Those words felt like a promise, a foundation on which we could rebuild trust and connection. In the weeks that followed, we noticed subtle but meaningful changes in Sarah's behavior. She became more mindful of shared spaces during her visits, always asking if she could contribute to household chores or bring something to share. She kept us updated on her progress, celebrating small victories like paying rent on time or getting positive feedback at work. It was evident that she was taking responsibility for her life and relationships, and it made us hopeful for what lay ahead. Of course, there were still occasional moments of tension. Old habits and misunderstandings didn't disappear overnight, but we approached these with patience and open hearts. When conflicts arose, we made a conscious effort to listen without judgment, and to communicate our feelings honestly but kindly. This new dynamic wasn't perfect, but it was real, grounded in respect and love rather than resentment. Looking back, I understood that Sarah's time living with us had been a difficult chapter, but also a necessary one. It forced us all to confront uncomfortable truths, to set boundaries, and to grow in empathy and patience. More importantly, it reminded us that family is not defined by perfection, but by the willingness to support one another through life's ups and downs. As our visits to Sarah's apartment became a regular part of life, the distance between us seemed to shrink. We shared meals, celebrated holidays, and created new memories together, moments that healed old wounds and forged stronger bonds. Sarah's journey from a dependent tenant to an independent, confident woman was inspiring to witness, and it gave us all hope that difficult beginnings could lead to brighter futures. That sense of hope, fragile yet persistent, became the foundation of our renewed relationship. It was a reminder that even the most challenging family struggles could be transformed by forgiveness, understanding, and the simple act of showing up for one another. And as Sarah continued to grow and thrive, we knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, as family. As months turned into a year, the transformation within our family became even more evident. Sarah's newfound independence and maturity were no longer just hopeful signs. They were realities that shaped our everyday interactions. We began to see her not just as the sister-in-law who had once disrupted our lives, but as a strong individual who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. Her journey was a testament to resilience and the power of second chances. It made me reflect on how fragile yet beautiful family ties can be, especially when nurtured with patience and love. During this time, we also focused on rebuilding the emotional fabric that had frayed. We held regular family gatherings where conversations flowed freely and laughter came easily. These moments were precious, serving as a reminder that connection required intentional effort from everyone involved. Sarah shared stories of her struggles and triumphs, and we listened with empathy rather than judgment. The walls that once separated us slowly gave way to openness and vulnerability, creating a safe space where healing could truly begin. One particular afternoon stands out in my memory. Sarah had invited us over for a homemade dinner she prepared entirely on her own. The meal was simple but thoughtfully crafted, reflecting her growing confidence and pride in her abilities. As we sat around her small dining table, the atmosphere was warm and filled with genuine affection. We toasted to new beginnings, to growth, and to the unbreakable bonds of family. It felt like a celebration not just of the moment, but of a shared journey marked by challenges and triumphs. Throughout this period, I also noticed subtle changes within myself and my spouse. The experience with Sarah taught us invaluable lessons about empathy, forgiveness, and the importance of setting healthy boundaries without sacrificing compassion. We grew more attuned to each other's needs and more committed to fostering an environment where everyone felt respected and valued. The difficulties we had faced became catalysts for personal and relational growth, deepening our understanding of what it truly means to support family. Sarah's progress also inspired us to extend our support beyond just words. We helped her with budgeting advice, encouraged her to pursue further education, and even assisted in networking opportunities that could enhance her career prospects. These actions stemmed from a genuine desire to see her succeed, and to repair the fractures caused by past conflicts. Watching her take these steps with determination and humility filled us with pride and hope for the future. Yet, despite all the positive changes, life continued to remind us that healing is an ongoing process. There were still moments when old patterns resurfaced or misunderstandings occurred. But now, equipped with better communication skills and deeper empathy, we navigated these challenges with greater ease and patience. We learned to address issues promptly and respectfully, preventing resentment from building up again. This proactive approach helped maintain the fragile peace we had worked so hard to establish. Reflecting on the entire experience, I realized that what initially seemed like a difficult burden was actually a profound opportunity for growth. For Sarah, for us, and for our entire family. It underscored the complexities of human relationships and the transformative power of kindness and perseverance. Most importantly, it reinforced the belief that no matter how challenging the past, there is always room for forgiveness, renewal, and love. As Sarah continued to build her life independently, our family bond remained strong and resilient. We celebrated milestones together, supported each other through setbacks, and cherished the moments of joy that punctuated our shared story. The journey was far from perfect, but it was ours, marked by authenticity, growth, and a deep commitment to one another. In the end, it was this commitment that truly defined what family meant to us. As the years went by, the story of Sarah and our family became a testament to the power of patience, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of love. What once began as a challenging and stressful situation evolved into a journey of healing and growth for everyone involved. Sarah's determination to overcome her struggles and our willingness to support her, despite the difficulties, transformed not only her life but also ours. The experience taught us invaluable lessons about the importance of empathy, setting boundaries, and the necessity of open, honest communication within a family. Looking back, I realize how easy it is to judge someone in the midst of conflict, but much harder to understand the deeper struggles that shape their behavior. Sarah's story reminded us all that people are more than their mistakes, and that with support and kindness, they can change and thrive. Our family became stronger because we chose to confront our challenges together rather than let them tear us apart. We learned that forgiveness isn't a single act but a continual process, one that requires humility and grace from everyone involved. Our relationship with Sarah today is one of mutual respect and love, built on the foundation of everything we went through together. She is no longer just the sister-in-law who once caused turmoil. She is a valued member of our family whose growth inspires us daily. We celebrate her successes and stand by her during tough times, knowing that family means being there for each other unconditionally. The house feels fuller and warmer now, not just because of her presence, but because of the bonds we've strengthened through adversity. I share this story not only to recount our experiences, but to offer hope to anyone facing similar family challenges. It's a reminder that even the most difficult situations can lead to positive change when approached with compassion and patience. No matter how strained relationships may seem, there is always potential for healing if we are willing to listen, forgive, and support one another. Families are imperfect, but they are also capable of incredible resilience and love. In closing, I want to express my gratitude for the journey we've had. While it was filled with hardship, it was also rich with lessons and moments of profound connection. Sarah's presence in our lives, though initially a source of tension, ultimately brought us closer and taught us the true meaning of family. We continue to grow together, embracing both the challenges and joys that come our way. Thank you for listening to our story. If you've faced similar struggles or have a story of family resilience, I invite you to share it in the comments. Let's support each other through the ups and downs, remembering that none of us are alone. Together, we can find strength in our shared experiences and create communities rooted in empathy and love. If you found this video meaningful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more stories and insights. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, take care of yourself and your loved ones. In every family, challenges and misunderstandings are inevitable, but it's how we face them that defines our bonds. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that even when situations seem difficult or painful, there's always room for growth, forgiveness, and healing. By choosing empathy over judgment and patience over anger, we can transform hardship into opportunity, strengthening relationships and creating deeper connections. Thank you for watching and being part of this story. Remember, family is not about perfection. It's about showing up, supporting each other, and growing together through life's ups and downs. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life experiences and lessons. Take care, and never underestimate the power of kindness and understanding in your own family.